Name the person you are smallest around. Don't explain it. Don't be fair to them. Just the name. Now, name the person you are largest around. The one where your voice sits lower and you finish your own sentences. 2 names, and you found both of them in about 4 seconds. That speed is the entire subject of this video, because you didn't calculate those. You retrieved them, which means they were already decided, filed and closed. And you were never present at the meeting where that happened. There is a book from 1906 that describes the meeting. It says that the first time 2 people meet, something is settled between them without either one noticing, and that it stays settled for years. I'm going to show you where it happens, why it almost never gets reopened, and the one place it can actually be changed, which is not where you think, and it is not inside the room. Before the book, one thing to check. It takes about 90 seconds, and it only works on the 2 names you already have, not better ones you build while I'm talking. Take the first name, the person you're smallest around. Now find one physical thing that changes in you near them, not a feeling. Feelings are easy to invent. A mechanical thing, where your voice starts, whether you rehearse a sentence before saying it, whether you laugh a half beat early, whether you check their face after you speak to see if it landed. Find yours. Most people find it in the voice or in the checking. Now the harder half. Take the second name, the one you're largest around, and find the same thing. Because whatever you just found near the first person, there is a very good chance the second person finds it near you. Same mechanism, and you are on the other end of it. Sit with that for a second, because it's the part nobody tells you. You are not a small person who occasionally meets big people. You are large in some rooms and small in others, and you did not choose either one. Here's what makes it worth having done. Notice that neither of those 2 positions was ever negotiated out loud. Nobody said the terms. There was no moment. And notice something worse. You can probably not remember the day it got decided with either of them. It was already true by the 2nd or 3rd time you met. That is the settlement. Hold on to both names. You'll need them at the end. And by then, one of them is going to look like something other than a fact about you. 2 seconds, and it's on topic. Subscribing is the one thing in this video where you set the position instead of catching it. Nobody's in the room. Nothing is being tested, and it's just you deciding. That's the whole skill in miniature. Do the easy version now, and then 2 things I'm not going to do. And I'd rather say them at 3 minutes than have you waiting for them at 20. I'm not going to teach you to win rooms. This material has an ugly cousin, and it is very popular right now. The version where you learn to hold eye contact 3 seconds too long and speak slowly enough to make people uncomfortable so that you come out on top of every settlement you walk into. That works, in the narrow sense that it does something. It also turns you into a person who is running a technique on his own friends, and I'm not going to be the one who hands you that. The book I'm reading from doesn't require it either. Nothing in the rest of this video depends on anyone else getting smaller, and I'm not going to tell you that your thoughts are traveling through the air and landing in other people's heads. The man who wrote this book believed that literally. He describes thought as waves moving out through a sea of mind, the way ripples move out from a stone. I don't know that that's true. I can't show it to you. And this is the part that matters. The thing I want to show you doesn't need it. Everything in this video survives if the metaphysics is wrong, because the mechanism is happening in a room, between 2 bodies, in about 10 seconds, and you can watch it. So the claim is narrow. Your position with a specific person was fixed early by a state you brought in with you, and it has been holding ever since without maintenance. That's it. That's the video. In 1906, a man named William Walker Atkinson published a small book called Thought Vibration, or The Law of Attraction in the Thought World. By the account printed in the front of the book, he was a lawyer who had had a breakdown, financial and physical, and rebuilt himself from it. What isn't in dispute is that he spent the rest of his life writing about the mind under about 6 different names. Almost everyone now agrees he was also one of the 3 anonymous authors of the Kybalion, the 1908 book this channel has been reading from for a year, which means if you've been here a while, you've already met him. You just met him with a hood on. Now, before the content, the flavor of the man, because it decides how you should hold everything that follows. The book opens with a foreword that is not about thought at all. Atkinson says he received a letter from a reader calling himself a faithful disciple, content to sit at the feet of the teacher. We only have his side of it. And Atkinson's response, printed in the front of his own book, is this: And the word disciples is in quotation marks the first time, which tells you the tone. I wish no disciples. Disciples are mere parrots repeating what one says, mere human sheep trotting along after some conceited old bellwether. He is telling you on page 1 not to do the thing you are currently doing. And he goes further. I am willing to say I don't know, and to accept from others that which appeals to me as truth, not because the other says that it is truth, but because my mind recognizes it as such. I want that standard applied to me for the next 20 minutes. Take what your own mind recognizes. Leave the rest on the table. That is the author's instruction, not mine. Now, the reason people call this a dangerous book. Chapter 2. Almost every popular idea about the mind is about your relationship with yourself, your beliefs, your habits, your self-talk, your programming. It's a closed loop, one person wide. Chapter 2 of Thought Vibration breaks the loop open and says something much less comfortable, that a meaningful part of what you call your personality is not yours. It's the residue of other people. His sentence for it is this: we are largely what we have thought ourselves into being, the balance being represented by the character of the suggestions and thought of others which have reached us. And then he finishes the sentence with his 1906 explanation, which I've already told you I'm setting aside. The balance. There is a balance. He's saying the arithmetic doesn't close with just you in it. And I have to say something here, because I said the opposite 4 weeks ago. The last video on this channel was about the mechanism. What actually happens when you imagine a thing and later have it? And the answer was that there is nothing on the other end. No sender, no receiver, nobody deciding. I stand by that completely, and if you haven't watched it, watch it after this one, because it's the floor this is built on. But there is a difference between the mechanism and the room. Nothing is on the other end of your imagination. Somebody is absolutely on the other end of your Tuesday afternoon. Those are 2 different questions, and I conflated them for years. Here's the reconciliation, and it's the whole bridge between the 2 videos. Set aside the ether, as I said I would. There is a version of every claim in this chapter that happens entirely in a room, between a nervous system and another nervous system, through posture and timing and voice, and the half second before someone answers you. That version is observable. That version is the one I'm going to defend, which brings us to the sentence this video exists for. Chapter 2. Most of the way down, Atkinson has been describing how minds sit at different pitches. His word is keynote, and then he writes this: when 2 people first meet, there is generally a silent mental conflict in which their respective minds test their quality of positiveness and fix their relative position toward each other, and then, immediately, the line that makes it dangerous. This process may be unconscious in many cases, but it occurs nevertheless. Read it again as a description of something you have watched 1,000 times. 2 people meet. Within about 10 seconds, without a word about it, a relative position is established. Who defers, who interrupts, who fills silence, who waits. Nobody agrees to it. Nobody remembers it. And then it holds. That is the settlement, and that is what the cover of this video means. I want to be precise about one word in there, because the whole thing turns on it. Positiveness. Atkinson does not mean positive thinking. That phrase didn't mean in 1906 what it means now, and if you read it as cheerfulness, the chapter falls apart. He means it the way you'd say a positive terminal. Charge. Which end of the current you're on. A perfectly miserable man can be positive in Atkinson's sense, and frequently is. That's why the most negative person you know is often the one who sets the temperature of the room. And notice what that does to the honest version of the sentence. What gets tested in the first 10 seconds is not who is better, it's who is more settled. Those are not the same measurement, and almost everyone in your life has quietly filed the first as if it were a verdict on the second. Now, the thing that makes it worse, and this is Atkinson at his sharpest, the adjustment is often automatic, but occasionally the struggle is so sharp, the opponents being so well matched that the matter forces itself into the consciousness of the 2 people. Only occasionally do you notice, only when it's close. Every settlement you can actually remember making was a tie. All the lopsided ones, the ones that shaped your life, went through under the radar because a fast, clean, one-sided settlement produces no friction and therefore no memory. You remember the arguments. You don't remember the surrenders. Here's one you can go and check. There is a meeting or a dinner table or a group chat where you have a thought and you don't say it, and you have a reason ready. It wasn't the moment, it wasn't important, someone would have taken it the wrong way. Now ask the harder question. In that same room, is there a person who would have said it? Not a better thought. The same thought, out loud, without preparing it. If you can name that person, you have just found a settlement, live, running today. The thought was equal. The position wasn't. And then he takes it somewhere most people never follow him to. He says it isn't a rank, it's a pair. Listen, we are positive or negative to everyone with whom we have relations. We may be positive to our children, our employees and dependents, but we are at the same time negative to others to whom we occupy inferior positions, or whom we have allowed to assert themselves over us. That's the sentence people flinch at, and I want to slow it down before it does damage, because read carelessly it says, the whole thing was your fault. That's not what it says. Allowed does not mean chose. You can allow something in the same way you allow a door to stay open by not knowing there was a door. The settlement happens at a speed below deciding. This is why you can't find the day it happened with either of your two names. There was no day. There were 10 seconds 3 years ago, and you were tired. So now put your two names back on the table. The person you're smallest around is not stronger than you. They are not smarter than you. They met you on a particular afternoon in a particular state, and a position got fixed, and it has been running on nothing ever since. It requires no maintenance. Neither of you has retested it. In some cases, the person on the large end has changed jobs, aged 10 years, lost their nerve entirely, and the settlement holds anyway, because settlements don't expire. They just stop being audited. And that's the good news buried in the bad news. Something that is being actively maintained is hard to change. Something that is only being remembered is not. Now, there's a version of this on my own channel that I should name, because if you've been here a long time, you'll hear the echo. Very early on, I used this same author and a tuning fork and a radio dial to talk about money. The idea that you hold a pitch and the world answers it. Same book, and I stand by it. But that video pointed the law outward, at circumstances. This one points it at a person standing 4 feet from you. And honestly, this is the version that has evidence you can check tonight. So come back to the word. What the two minds test, he says, is their quality of positiveness, their charge, not their worth. And a charge is not a trait. A charge is a condition, and a condition has a cause, and the cause is not in the room. It's the state you walked in carrying. Which means the villain of this video is not the person you're smallest around. It's the 10 minutes before the door. Let me deflate the whole thing, because this is where it stops being sinister. Atkinson's mechanism sounds like combat, silent conflict, opponents, testing. It isn't. It's ordinary, and it's mostly physical, and it's happening to both people equally. Watch what actually occurs in the 10 seconds. Two nervous systems arrive at different levels of activation. One person is settled in their body, breathing low, unhurried, not scanning. The other arrived from somewhere hard. A phone call, traffic, a bad email, a fight at home, 40 minutes of comparing themselves to strangers on a screen, and is still slightly braced. Nothing mystical passes between them. The braced one waits a half-beat longer before speaking. The unhurried one fills the space, because someone always fills the space. And that's it. That's the settlement. It was decided by physiology and timing before anybody said anything worth judging, which is why the cruelest thing in this book is also the least accurate thing in it. Atkinson describes the person on the low end of the exchange this way. He says you are used as a human doormat or football by more positive persons. I'd change that. Not because it's harsh, because it's wrong, and wrong in a way that costs people years. A doormat implies a type, something you are. But the exact same man is the doormat in one building and the immovable one in another, in the same afternoon, wearing the same shoes. That's not a character, that's a state. And states arrive from somewhere. And I'd hold Atkinson to his own book on this, because 2 paragraphs earlier, he already gave the better answer. He wrote that the mind has many degrees of pitch and that you can move along it. You cannot have both. Either the low end is a kind of person, a doormat, a football, or it's a position on a scale that everyone occupies at different moments. It's the second one. He knew it was the second one. He just couldn't resist the insult. And 1906 was full of men who couldn't. That's the flaw running through the whole New Thought shelf. An accurate mechanism wrapped in contempt for the people who need it most. Take the mechanism. Leave the contempt on the page where he wrote it. So here is the part I'd ask you to be careful reading, because it's where this stops being about theory. Think about the last time you were small in a room. Not humiliated, just smaller than you meant to be. You went home afterwards and you ran the tape and you told yourself you should have said the thing. And then you did the standard repair. You decided you needed more confidence. Maybe you read something. Maybe you rehearsed a better sentence for next time. And it didn't work, and you concluded that you are simply like this. But look at where you aimed the repair. You aimed it at the room, at the sentence, at the moment. Every one of those is downstream of a settlement that was already closed before you opened your mouth. You were trying to renegotiate a contract in the middle of its execution using words against a position that was never established by words in the first place. Of course, it didn't work. And there's a second layer, and this one is the reason I wanted to make this video. Some of you have organized an entire life around one settlement. You have chosen the smaller ambition, the safer sentence, the job you didn't apply for, because somewhere back there, a position got fixed with a father, a first boss, an older brother, a teacher, someone who has not thought about you in 15 years. They aren't maintaining it. Nobody is maintaining it. You are carrying an agreement that the other party forgot they made. And you've probably generalized it, which is the expensive part. A position taken with one man at 23 becomes a posture you bring to every man who resembles him. Every older man in a suit, every person who speaks slowly, every room with a table in it. One settlement wholesaled out across a life. That is how a person ends up believing they have a personality problem when what they actually have is a filing error. That is the honest cost of the thing, and it's why I'll defend calling it a dangerous book. Not because it teaches you to influence people, because it tells you how cheaply the shape of your life got decided. Now, what to do about it. Atkinson gives an instruction, and it's beautiful, and it is, on its own, useless. He writes, "Rise to the upper chambers of your mental dwelling and key yourself up to a strong pitch, away above the vibrations on the lower planes of thought." Wonderful sentence. Try executing it at 8:55 in a lobby. You can't. Nobody rises to an upper chamber on command in front of another human being. Standing in front of the person is precisely the moment the machinery is least available to you. So the method isn't in the room. The method is the room before the room. I call it the anteroom. 3 rules. Rule 1, find your last entrance. Do this now, because it only works on a real one, and it takes about a minute. Take the last time you were smaller in a room than you meant to be. You have it. Now don't look at the room at all. Go backwards through the door and find the 10 minutes before you walked in. What were you actually doing? Almost nobody has to search for this, and it's usually one of a very short list. A screen, an argument, a rush, or a rehearsal. I want to say something about that last one, because it's the one that feels responsible. Rehearsing the conversation on the way in is the most expensive thing on that list. You think you are preparing. What you are actually doing is holding a simulation of that person in your head for 10 minutes and losing to them repeatedly, so that by the time the real one arrives, you have already been the second speaker 11 times. You walk in mid-argument, they walk in fresh. Whatever you just found, that was the negotiation. The room was only the signing. Rule 2, the anteroom is 10 minutes long, and that's all it is. This is the rule that makes the whole thing survivable. The state that decides the settlement was not assembled in your childhood, and it is not stored in your beliefs. It was assembled recently, in the last 10 minutes, which means it is the most changeable thing in this entire video. You are not going to repair 20 years of positioning. Nobody does that, and anyone selling you that is selling. What you can do is own the 10 minutes before Thursday. That's a real amount of control over a real variable, and it's roughly the only one on offer. Rule 3, arrive from somewhere else, not a technique, a subtraction. Before a room that matters, you take those 10 minutes and you remove 2 things, the screen and the rehearsal. Then you arrive early enough that you have physically stopped moving before anyone sees you, because a body that is still traveling reads as a body that is behind. And if you want the one legitimate move inside the room, it's not a power posture and it's not eye contact. It's this. When someone asks you something, let the pause happen. One beat. Most of the deference you give away is given away in the half second where you rush to fill a silence that wasn't yours to fill. You can't win a settlement in there, but you can decline to hand one over. That's the method, and I'm aware of how small it sounds next to a chapter about minds broadcasting across an ether. It's aimed at the right place, which matters more than sounding large. And here's Atkinson himself, arguing with the version of himself that gets quoted on the internet. It is not necessary to strike the extreme note on all occasions. The better plan is to keep yourself in a comfortable key, without much strain, and to have the means at command whereby you can raise the pitch at once when occasion demands. A comfortable key, without much strain. The man who wrote a book about vibrating at a high pitch spends a paragraph telling you not to walk around vibrating at a high pitch. That's the sentence that made me trust the book. 3 limits, and I'm not going to shorten any of them. The first one is not optional. Everything I've described assumes an ordinary room with ordinary people in it. If the reason you get small around someone is that they punish you when you don't, if there is fear in it, if you manage your words to avoid a consequence, if you feel it in your body before you see them, that is not a settlement, and this video does not apply to it. That's coercion, and it has a different shape and a different exit. Tell one real person out loud this week. If it's affecting how you sleep or how you eat, that belongs with a doctor or a therapist, not with me. I'm not going to pretend a video about a book from 1906 is the right tool for it, because it isn't. Second, the predictable side effect of what I had you do today. For about a week, you are going to score rooms. You'll walk into a conversation and start watching who defers, who fills the silence, who checks whose face, including in conversations that don't matter at all, with people who like you. It's unpleasant, and it makes you a slightly worse friend. Give it 7 days. If you're still auditing every room after that, stop doing it on purpose and go do something with your hands, because at that point you've replaced a live with a hobby. Third, the honest size of this. You have maybe 2 or 3 settlements that are actually costing you something, not 20. Over the next month, if you manage the 10 minutes before 4 or 5 rooms that matter, you will probably move exactly 1 position. And you'll notice it not as a triumph, but as an absence. You'll leave somewhere and realize you didn't run the tape on the way home. That's smaller than the title of this video. It's also the true one. A book cannot hand you a new position with anybody. What this one can do is tell you that the position was never a verdict on you. It was 10 seconds and a state, and you weren't consulted. So, your 2 names. One of them is where you're smallest, and you've been treating it as information about your worth. It isn't. It's a record of an afternoon. And the other one, the person you're largest around, I'd think about that one tonight. Because somewhere in that arrangement, there's someone who found your name in 4 seconds too. Tell me the word in the comments if you're going to work the 10 minutes this week. Settled. 1 word. I read them.